All right, it's recording. Are you seeing that it's recording? Great, excellent. All right. So this is a collaborative project of Community Legal Aid and the Trial Court Central Division, as well as the Worcester County Bar Association. This is not a new program that we've been administering, but it's the first time that we have done it remotely. We, as of when the pandemic set in March, the Lawyer for the Day small claims session was suspended, and they have not held any small claims sessions in the trial court in the Worcester Central Division since March. So starting in January is going to be the first time that small claims sessions have even been held since the beginning of the pandemic. So this is the first time that they're being held, and also the first time they're going to be held remotely. I'm just going to go to the next slide. There we go. Just to give some welcome and introductions, my name is Meredith Palmer. I'm the Pro Bono Director at Community Legal Aid. Anita Conti is our Pro Bono Coordinator who has been administering this project, the in-court project, for quite some time now. She is, Anita, do you want to raise your hand? Actually, you're on the phone, so you might not be able to see. But Anita Conti is here. She is on the Zoom, and she'll be present later in the presentation. And just to give you just a brief overview of Community Legal Aid's pro bono programs, we are a 5-county legal service organization. We cover the 5 counties from Worcester all the way west. We have 2 coordinators who are based in Worcester that handle Worcester County because that is our largest county. And then we have 2 coordinators who are based in Springfield. This project obviously is a Worcester-based program, and it's administered by our Worcester-based coordinators, and Anita has been the one that's been spearheading this project for a number of years. Moving on to what the Remote Lawyer for the Day project is going to look like as like a broad overview. So starting in January 12th, 2021 will be the first day. The small claims sessions are going to be held once a week on Tuesday mornings from 8:45 to 1 p.m. There's also an afternoon session, but the Lawyer for the Day is only going to be offered in the morning. Possible in the future we could open it up to the afternoon session as well, but we have historically only staffed the morning session, and we're gonna start that with the Remote Lawyer for the Day as well. This is going to happen. Where is it going to happen? It's going to be via Zoom. The court, through the court notice, has a dedicated Zoom link for the small claims session. The meeting ID is provided here in the PowerPoint. There's no passcode. There's also a link that's included in the court notice. If before one volunteers, we will make sure that you have all this information so that you know where to sign in. Who is involved with this project? Well, Anita Conti is the pro bono coordinator who will be the coordinator who is going to assist with screening and provide additional support. We also have another coordinator, Brittany Raposa, who will serve as a backup if Anita is not able to make it that day. But Anita should be the face that you'll be familiar with seeing, and the primary point person for any questions about the project. So Anita will be there for the Lawyer for the Day, and then one volunteer. We're looking for one Lawyer for the Day volunteer to volunteer their time for that morning session. How do you get involved or register? Well, the first thing you need to do, if you're not already a volunteer or haven't taken a case from Community Legal Aid as a pro bono attorney, either through our small claims Lawyer for the Day or any other area of law, you'll need to sign up on our website. It's a very simple online link. It virtually just asks you what your name is and some other information, so you can you can be added into our system so that you're logged as a volunteer in our system. And then to actually sign up for a specific day for the Lawyer for the Day, we have a Sign Up Genius as the platform for easily. You'll get an email, and they'll have dates that are available to sign up. You simply sign up on the website, and then it sends a notice back to us. So look in explaining what the Remote Lawyer for the Day will look like, we thought it would be helpful to have a flow chart. I will preface this with, when we were talking with the court about launching the Remote Lawyer for the Day, the Assistant Clerk Magistrate, Mike Prosser, was very candid in saying that we don't know exactly how seamless this is going to be. We want to just offer it, and we probably will be fumbling along a bit, but we're if everyone is open to being flexible and figuring this out as we go, that's going to be the best way to approach Lawyer for the Day. There are some other remote Lawyer for the Day programs that are being offered statewide in other divisions, and they're having some success, but it is bumpy along the way. We don't mean this to scare folks. We want this to be more of as a source of comfort that the court's just happy that we are offering this, and that lawyers will show up to help volunteer, to assist litigants, and it's okay if it doesn't go perfectly or there's bumps along the way. I'll just go through the flow chart. If you have questions as I'm going through this, please don't hesitate to stop me, and I can try to provide further clarification. So when you the first step to the program will be at 8:45. The trial list roll call happens, meaning the folks at that point by 8:45 should be logged into Zoom, clicked on the link in Zoom, and they will be first go to a waiting room, very similar to how when you came into this Zoom event, you were in a waiting room and the host had to add you in. Assistant Clerk Magistrate Prosser will be admitting people into from the waiting room into one large gallery Zoom room, much like what you're seeing now. They will call the roll, the docket. There will be 15 cases in the morning session, 15 cases in the afternoon session, so it shouldn't be too many people. And as part of the roll call, Assistant Clerk Magistrate Prosser will also introduce the Lawyer for the Day program, simply saying that there is a volunteer lawyer here. If you're interested in speaking with a lawyer about your case, raise your hand. The litigant will raise their hand. And at that point, we'll go to the steps 2 in the flow chart, CLA eligibility screening. Anita Conti will be sent to a breakout room with the interested litigant and to conduct a screening, get a little bit more information about what their case is about, what they're looking for. Anita will have some forms completed by the litigant electronically, get the information. And then if the litigant is interested in talking to the volunteer will then be sent to a breakout room with the litigant. And that's when on step 3 of the flow chart, the Lawyer for the Day volunteer connects with the client. That is where the volunteer attorney and the litigant will have a confidential breakout room to talk about their case, find out what's going on. Hopefully there can be some exchange of documents electronically, depending on the litigant's accessibility, whether they can scan and email information to the volunteer, or if there's some other way to exchange document. This is where I think we're going to learn as we go. It could also just be that you speak to the litigant and determine that you need more time, or an attorney would need more time to figure out what the posture of the case is. But that's all going to happen in that initial breakout room with the litigant. And the volunteer can determine what's the appropriate level of service and what the next steps could be with that litigant. At that point, there will be another check-in with the court clerk. So you'll go from your breakout room back into the main room where you can update the clerk about, I've met with this litigant. I either need to, this case can be resolved today. This case is going to need a continuance, and just give the court a sense of like how you think you should proceed in terms of providing assistance to the litigant. If you're choosing to engage in any kind of negotiations that day or at a later date, you can submit an LAR electronically, which is provided on the court website. We'll also have those available where we can send them electronically. And the email where all documents are being asked to be sent is provided in step 4, in the box 4 of the flow chart. So once you communicate to the clerk, this is how you want to proceed. Then at that point, either negotiations can take place with opposing parties in another Zoom breakout room to see if the case can be resolved. I will say, I didn't mention this in the first slide, 90% of cases that come into small claims through the Lawyer for the Day program are negotiated. Very rarely do they actually go to a trial. And the Assistant Clerk Magistrate said, at this point, if the case were to go to trial, it's not going to happen the day of the event. It would be continued to another day. So it's very unlikely that one of our volunteers will show up for their session and expect to go to trial that day. It's more going to be, you're going to meet with someone, provide some counsel and advice, maybe negotiate with the other side, potentially be able to negotiate it that day. It's more likely the case will be continued to another date. Which brings me to slide 6, or the box 6 under continuances. You would communicate to the court clerk, I think this case needs a continuance for reasons XYZ. They have said that they're going to liberally allow continuances for cases to be negotiated outside of court or for more work to be done outside of court. It will be up to a volunteer to, and I'll talk a little bit about that, more about this later, but it could be up to the volunteer if you want to just sign up for the morning and do all that you can do that day, provide counsel and advice, negotiate as much as you can, that's fine. But it's also an option to take the case to the next court date or to agree to take it so that you can negotiate outside of court, maybe not return with the litigant, but at least engage in some out-of-court negotiations for the litigant. But that is something that we can discuss based on your comfort level and the time that you may have available. And then on slide 7, case disposition. At the end of the session, Anita will connect with you and submit a form electronically that is a case disposition. It basically is a summary, very easy, simple summary of what happened that day, whether a settlement was negotiated, just the outcome of the case as of that day. And that is a form that we need for our reporting purposes. And Anita will initiate that through email and through it's called PandaDoc software. It's a software that allows electronic signatures that are immediately sent back to Anita to record into our system. And then finally, the last box here, the 11 a.m. payment review list will be initiated. Payment reviews is not a part of the session that our Lawyer for the Day program has historically been involved with. It's a different set of cases. The court has expressed an interest in having our Lawyer for the Day volunteers participate in that or advocate for some of the litigants in that process. This is not something that we're asking our volunteers to do affirmatively, but if this is something you have experience in or interested in doing, that option will be available. We are going to have further conversations with the court about how this could be helpful or how this could work, but we did want to put that on your radar in the event that's something that you have experience with. I'm going to move on to the next slide. So just to give some information to you about what a litigant is receiving from the court, the information that they're receiving in their court notice. So the court has sent out notices to litigants who have cases pending against them. It's the notice of virtual small claims trial with a Zoom link, and also the statement of claim and notice. So the information about their case is sent to them via the mail. They have the information of how to log in, how to contact the court, and all the communication information that they need to participate in the virtual hearing. There is, I will say in the notice, there is language that alerts the litigants to say, if you don't have internet access, if you're not able to attend for whatever reason, or if you don't want to do this remotely and you are requesting an in-person hearing, they must contact the clerk magistrate's office within 3 days, or at least 3 days prior to the trial via the phone and email that's provided in the notice. And likewise, if they are choosing to show up and go forward on their trial, they must submit any written evidence, documents, photos, whatever that may be, must be submitted to the clerk at least 3 days prior to the hearing to the email address provided. The assistant clerk magistrate emphasized that as long as they won't hold that very strictly as long as the other side has been provided that documentation. But it's anticipated that most people who are showing up for their remote hearing are not going to go to hearing that day. So this probably will not be a big issue. The more likely scenario is that there will be a continuance for the court, for the litigant to come on another day and truly prepare for their hearing if that's the direction the case is going. Also in the notice, there is a language or information about litigants requesting interpreter services. Just like in in-person sessions, the court is required to provide interpretation services. They're encouraged to contact the court as soon as possible to make arrangements for that. Again, the more likely scenario is if someone needs an interpreter, they will just continue that case and have an interpreter scheduled for the next court date. And finally, also in the mailing, which we are quite pleased with, along with the notice of virtual small claims trial, the court is also sending a notice that the Lawyer for the Day program will be provided, which is huge because litigants will have the option to contact us ahead of time so that we can potentially know a little bit more about their case before they're virtually walking in on the day of their hearing, so we can maybe do some prep work ahead of time. But also they know to ask for a lawyer for the day if they show up on that day and have gotten notice, which is great in terms of providing some access to litigants who otherwise may not know about the program. And finally, also in that court notice, there is a guide to virtual hearings that is available on the court website. I encourage our volunteers to also take a look at it because it provides some helpful information for attorneys as well. But it's geared towards pro se litigants who are representing themselves in a virtual hearing. But many of the same tips apply as well. There's also in the notice the clerk's office information. I provided in this slide the email address and the phone number for all the small claims information that you may need. Moving right along to levels of representation, I'm just going to touch a little bit more on, I mentioned this in the flow chart, specifically what your role could be at Lawyer for the Day. And I mentioned that at this point, there's going to be just a need for some flexibility because we don't know how much can be done during the small claims session remotely. It's not like you're in person where you easily can just go into a room with a litigant, look at their papers that they brought you, go into another room with the opposing party, look at the papers that they have. There's going to be more of a barrier in exchanging the information that you would need to negotiate a settlement or just to advocate on behalf of the client. So it's unclear how seamless that's going to be. So the different scenarios that we think that could play out on a Lawyer for the Day, one, it could be simply just giving counsel and advice to a client based on the information you know, or information the court can share. It could just be talking to a client, giving them some more information, and advising them on what their next steps should be in terms of what they need to do to prepare for their case. Or it could go to another level where you're providing limited assistance representation that day and engaging in negotiations with the opposing party that day, entering into agreement for judgment, which would be submitted to the court electronically, or asking for a continuance because you identify, okay, there's some good claims here, there's some good defenses, I need to negotiate outside of court. And then the unlikely scenario that you'll actually go to trial that day. So that's what same day assistance would look like, what you're doing actually from 8:45 to 1 on 1 or 2 or 3 cases, how many are assigned to you. You could take that to the next level, which is assisting a client LAR beyond the initial appearance date. And that would be the scenario where you meet with someone and you just need more information and you need more time just because of the logistical barriers, where you can engage in negotiations outside of court on your own time and either at that point agree to come back on another court date with the litigant, or you can at least engage in negotiations and then the litigant can appear on the next court date on their own. So you'd be drafting documents or drafting agreements and that the litigant themselves would submit on another day. We're leaving that open and up to your ability to provide that kind of representation beyond the actual Lawyer for the Day date. And that's something we can talk to you individually or on a case-by-case basis. We just wanted to provide a little background on what limited assistance representation is. I believe most folks are familiar, but if you're not, in Massachusetts, we had the option, or attorneys had the option of providing limited assistance representation, LAR, is the short term for it. When an attorney, as opposed to putting in a full appearance in a case, can represent a litigant with just part of a case or part of their legal matter, instead of putting in a full appearance where you're in the case from the beginning to the end. LAR is great for Lawyer for the Day type programs because you're able to provide assistance that day and that day only. And it's very clearly communicated between the attorney and the litigant, the extent of what your representation would be, and that your representation ends at a defined time or period when it is ending, as opposed to at the end of the case. To volunteer as a lawyer for the day, LAR, there is a statewide LAR certification video that you would need to watch. It's a simple, it's like, I think it's like 30 minutes, a video on what it means to be LAR, kind of the ethical implications of it. So before you would volunteer at a lawyer for the day, we just ask that you complete that certification. And then there are two forms, court forms that you would submit to the court in lieu of a full appearance, would just be your notice of limited appearance. And on the form, you specifically define what your role is. And then there's a notice of withdrawal of the limited appearance, where it very specifically says, this is when I'm withdrawing. And at this time, I'm going to hand it over to Anita Conti, who is going to just talk a little bit about what the benefits of being a lawyer for the day volunteer are. And then we're going to open it up to any questions that you may have about this project, about volunteering in general, or anything you want to add. And we encourage, if there's any questions or topics that we did not cover that would be helpful for us to know, we would love to hear that, because we do plan to circle back with the court with any questions that folks have today that we can get answered before this program launches. So Nita, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Thank you so much, Meredith, and thank you, Attorney Bisfalco, particularly for being so, for your persistence with this project. I recall 9 months ago when you were signed up to participate, I think for the end of March or maybe the beginning of April, and I had to write you to cancel that because of the pandemic. So I appreciate you hanging in there for all this time and being willing to come back for this remote iteration of the project. I think when my former colleague and I spoke to you on the phone, we were really looking forward to welcoming you to this project. It has kind of a long history at the trial court in Worcester, and a history of collaboration with the local bar association as well. It was started about 12 years ago as an Access to Justice Fellowship with a former district court judge who saw a need for low-income debtors to have some assistance in small claims sessions. So we're really very fortunate to continue it this day and sort of bring it forward. So some of the benefits that we hope that you'll get from volunteering with us is, number one, some professional perks. We like to provide our pro bono attorneys our MCLE training vouchers. These are sort of increasingly becoming hot commodities, as all MCLE trainings are now virtual. We give you a voucher that you can avail yourself of a future training. Attorneys really like volunteering with this project because it's a discrete time donation. You pick the day and the time and you sign up, which I already thank you for doing, because I saw on the Sign Up Genius that you're already signed up. So I appreciate that. We try to make this process just as easy on you as possible. We value your time, especially during the pandemic. I'm sure you are terrifically busy in your own private practice. Some of the other benefits, and these might not apply to you as much as a seasoned attorney, but for some newer attorneys coming in, there's kind of an increased practice visibility within the trial court, and also within kind of the comfort level of appearing in a courtroom setting. And then lastly, this session in particular in the past in person has really had a feel-good aspect to it. I can't tell you how many sessions would end with a lawyer for the day getting a hug. I mean, you'll be amazed. These clients come in, many of whom have never met an attorney in their lives, some of whom don't speak the language. Many are severely disabled. And for them to have access to some type of advocacy in a system that they really feel that they have no power is really transformative. And so it's been hugely impactful for me, supporting that project to really witness that feel-good aspect. So thank you again. So I'm going to ask if you have any questions right now. This is the time to ask it. We also look forward, after we're done today, to follow up with some other substantive resources. Meredith, my director, mentioned that there are other court projects going right now in the state. So we participate in kind of learning, sharing with them. One of them is the Volunteer Lawyers Project. They have a really excellent substantive legal training Vimeo that we can pass on to our members as well. So just wondering if you have any questions, if you want to unmute and ask them, that would be a great time.